Hello everyone, Nicole Stecklein, technical agronomist for DEKALB Asgrow in Northeast Iowa. We're seeing tassels, we will soon be seeing planes. So it begs the question, should I apply fungicide? Here are my top considerations that I think about when making the decision if I should make a fungicide application or not. Consideration number one, and the most important one, yield potential. Because fungicide doesn't make yield, it simply protects the yield that this plant has spent building the entire season. Fungicides, for as magical as they are, can't fix a nutrient deficiency. They can't fix a subpar population. But what they can do is protect the yield that we have. So I'm going to want to make sure that my crop is looking good, I'm set up for good pollination, and that's going to be my number one determining factor on fungicide or not. Number two, and it's a big one, environment and the weather forecast. Now this is twofold. First off, do we have the weather environment forecast that's conducive to disease development? Now, most of our plant diseases are fungal based. Where do you find fungus growing? Warm, wet conditions. So the other part of the environment conversation is, do I have an environment and a forecast for high yields, or am I going to hit a drought, or am I going to get flooded out? Because I'm not going to make a $30 application if I'm going to lose my crop. Next consideration, drum roll please, crop rotation. So obviously you're much more likely to get a high pathogen load in a corn on corn acre as opposed to a rotated acre. So I'm going to start my scouting efforts and put those corn on corn acres to the top of the list for priority on getting sprayed or not. Now, this last consideration, which a lot of people tend to focus on, is hybrid response to fungicide. Now, you have a much better chance of predicting whether you're going to have a response to fungicide or not based on the last three things that I just talked about. The last one, hybrid response, we tend to get wrapped up around a lot. But if we put a hybrid that's got a very high, low response to fungicide. So let's think a big, robust plant that, has really good disease tolerance scores. If you still put that hybrid into a corn on corn scenario where we've had disease pressure in the past, we got high yield potential in that field, and we've got an environment like this, there's still probably a good chance that we're going to get our money back on an application on that hybrid, even though we might not typically see a lot of response from it. Particularly with high crop prices, it's not going to take as much of a response to get us paid back on that roughly $30 an acre investment. So we do have differences among these hybrids. What I have done is compiled a list of all of our hybrids, and on that same sheet I have put down, what are the disease ratings for our top diseases in Iowa, but then I also took into consideration stalk strength, root strength, so is it likely to fall down and deteriorate? Harvest appearance, is it a plant that falls apart? Late season stay green, is it a die and dry type of hybrid? I've taken that together and put it into an index that kind of gives you an idea of what type of plant it is and if it's a plant that will historically respond to fungicide or not. So that's how I make my decisions. I also very often get asked the question, what product should I use? Now, obviously, I'm a little biased towards Delero Complete, but I also think that it is a complete product. So when we look at fungicides in general, you basically got three different tiers of products. You've got your single modes of action. So you'll only get like a strobe, or it's just a triazole, or it's just an SDHI. In my opinion, spraying a single mode of action fungicide is going to be pushing us towards resistance, because these fungus do have the ability to build resistance to a fungicide. So I'm not going to spray a single mode of action fungicide. The next step is a dual mode of action fungicide. So most of these dual mode of action fungicides like Stratego YLD or Delero, those have two different fungicides in them. So you get the strobe, which is our main mode of action for prevention. That's also the one that gives you like that plant health and that greening. And then it's also going to be premixed with a triazole. So that is kind of your, some people will call it curative, but I don't like that term. I like to call it post-infection control. So your strobia is your prevention, and then your triazole is kind of what's trying to kill the infection that is within that plant. So that's our second tier. I still like these, but if I really want to give myself the best control, I'm going to go with one of those 3 mode of action fungicides, which is what Delero Complete is. So those 3 mode of action fungicides are going to contain a strobe, so that's going to be our best preventative fungicide component, along with that greening and plant health. It's also going to have a triazole in there, like we talked before, for post-infection control, but it's also adding a 3rd mode of action called an SDHI. What's interesting about these SDHI fungicide components is that they have very long residual, but they also have a very narrow spectrum of control. What's cool about the SDHI that's in Delero Complete, Delero, I don't know, somebody at Bayer tell me the right way to say it. But the SDHI and Delero Complete, that narrow spectrum of control, is really good for gray leaf spot. And typically that is one of our biggest diseases that we deal with here in Iowa. So Delero Complete is going to give us 3 modes of action. That 3rd mode of action that has that long residual is a specializer on gray leaf spot.